I'm teaching a free class on design thinking right now is what's happening. Okay, I guess that's just what's happening. Here, use it, please. Take it. If you want to do more with me, you can reach out. I don't know if I'll have capacity, so I might as well get this out here now so it's useful to the most people. Hey, sweet pup. Hi, house wolf. Little wolfling. Hi, best friend. Oh my goodness. Are you cuddling the lighting? Cuddling all the tripods. That's what they're for, is cuddling. Look at this dog. Look at, how can anyone resist? Look at her. Look at that. Look at that face. Where did she even come from? Can you say hi to the people? Say hello. Say, people. We send you love in these trying times. Yeah. Hey friends. Welcome back to Disabled Farm School. I'm Rachel, and this week's video is going to be a little bit different. You'll notice I'm sitting at a desk. I am not out in the garden. I am not doing a fun DIY project at my kitchen table. I'm not at the ocean collecting salt water to harvest sea salt. I'm not in my driveway picking olives. I am just here sitting. And that's the reality a lot of the time. And I don't usually film it. But I've been having a very higher symptom last month, and you haven't seen me on here. I haven't put a video out in a while. I have been having a tough summer, health-wise. If you have chronic conditions with dynamic symptoms, dynamic levels of disability, meaning it changes from day to day and week to week and month to month, and it's not predictable always how it or when it's going to change, you may be familiar with this experience of thinking you've got a handle on what your general patterns are, designing and building a life or a business around those patterns, and then having those patterns change. And it's not clear for how long. It's not clear what the new baseline is. It's not clear what you're going to be able to do and what you're not going to be able to do. And you really don't feel good. Or at least I don't. I've been having very prolonged flu-like symptoms, which is one of the weird things about the chronic illnesses that I have. They cause flu-like symptoms with no infection present. When that happens, the first thing I always have to do is double check to make sure there's no infection present so I'm not going to get somebody else sick. And then I have to rest a lot, but I also have to do a lot of physical therapy. If I just rest, get issues with chronic pain in my joints, or my plantar fasciitis in my foot flares up like happened in the last 48 hours. I worked out. I did a strength training physical therapy routine on Monday, and yesterday, which is 2 days later, the middle of the day, out of nowhere, my very well managed extreme heel pain in my right foot suddenly came back after months of being really well managed. I wasn't doing anything. I was just walking across the floor and suddenly couldn't. It's okay. I know how to manage all of these things, but psychologically, it's tough. And I know a lot of people are having tough moments right now for a lot of different reasons. So I thought today I would do something a little different and share what I do when my circumstances change and I need to rethink my plan. And I'm struggling with it. Something that is still a growing edge for me is how many times since both realizing that I had nameable chronic illnesses, nameable disabilities that did have some treatments, but also mostly not. Treatment is the wrong word. Management tactics. None of them are, as far as we know, treatable or curable. That was happening right around the same time that I was trying to start working for myself. I have had a lot of trial and error, present and then pivot in my public work life since that time. Disabled Farm School, this channel, is the most recent iteration. It is technically a new project, and the business, Next World Design, or racheleconomy.com, where I do sustainable design thinking education and visionary futures-oriented media and art and video for folks who are trying to do social impact work or creative work. It's not the first time that I've done a lot of those things, and it's quite vulnerable to start and stop and restart in a different direction and stop in public, even when I don't have a very big audience yet. That's something that those of us with recovering perfectionism, it's not that the perfectionism's recovering, I'm trying to recover from it. Recovering perfectionist. It can bring up a lot of shame to try something and fail, quote unquote, in front of other people. And there's also a very real fear for me of like overtaxing an exhausted digital community. Like, now look at this thing. No, actually it's this thing. But that's the reality of a lot of people's lives, a lot of people's creative processes. And it's especially the reality of trying to work with dynamic disabilities and chronic illnesses, especially ones that cause post-exertional symptoms, cognitive symptoms, fatigue that is different than tiredness, and orthostatic intolerance, which is basically your body reacts to being upright. There's lots of other symptoms that also make it very hard to work consistently. And a lot of people, that shows up with them having to take leaves of absence from their jobs or switch jobs over and over again. So it's very normal. I think the part that feels really vulnerable to me is that I feel like I'm promising a thing and then rescinding it. I want to reframe that today for myself, for my business. If I'm going to continue running a business, and even if I don't continue running a business, I will continue creating things to put out into the world. I'm an artist, I'm a writer, I'm a performer. That's not going to stop even if it slows down. This iterating in front of other people, iterating constantly as our circumstances and our baselines change, this type of design thinking, which is what it is a disabled specialty. Disability and design thinking go hand in hand. The types of creativity in taking care of ourselves and each other that come out of disabled and chronically ill communities, out of the disability justice movement, which you should absolutely look into and read up on if you have not heard of it before. I wish I could say I'd put some links down below, but YouTube doesn't think I count as a verified account because I don't want them to use facial recognition on me. So until I make enough videos, they won't let me link other people's stuff. So if you want to shout at them about that in the comments, feel free. Design thinking actually, as a process, belongs to all of us, to anyone. It is most often referred to in the tech and product design sectors, which a lot of us can't access or don't want to access. And in those sectors, it is very, very rapid iteration and innovation oriented, with a big focus on profit and company growth. Now, those are important things to companies. But design thinking isn't something that companies invented. In fact, it's a very human thing that has existed in our communities for as long as I think personally the species has existed. So what is it, and what does it have to do with the fact that I don't feel good right now and I'm making a video for you about it? Design thinking says that failure is data gathering. That's all it is. If you're not doing it, you're not actually getting good information. Now, this doesn't mean that you should do high stakes, risking other people's well-being activities constantly. Failure as a generative process is such a lovely idea in theory. In practice, it is mediated by all kinds of systemic positionality, privilege, injustice, lineage, our families, our communities, the cultures we come from, whether they're super pro-design thinking, but in this way that's all about success, which is an interesting conundrum, or they're cultures that it feels very dangerous to fail because they're cultures that have been under attack or still are. Failure, meaning I tried a thing and it didn't work, it's at the heart of scientific processes, it's at the heart of a lot of creative processes, and I think it's at the heart of who we are as a species. There is a way in which, on a bigger scale, re-embracing failure as a generative process is part of acknowledging limits individually, physically, but also ecologically, culturally, that we shouldn't always press the big red button, right? Sometimes we fail and it's because there was a boundary. Wendell Berry has this piece in the book, What Are People For?, where he talks about, as a longtime agriculturalist, digging a pond, I believe on a hill on his farm, and it goes terribly wrong, right? And he knows this ecosystem intimately. He has been working with it for generations in his family, and he's been watching it for seasons, interacting with it. And he still misestimates the limits. and the ecosystem immediately smacks him in the face with them. He listens. That's what the whole piece is about. But his pond failed. He's very good at land management, and his pond failed. And it indicated a limit. It indicated a parameter. You could call it a creative parameter, but it is a parameter. I can say all that really easily. I am so tired of finding new limits. I'm so tired of my limits changing constantly. I'm so tired of failing in public. I don't like it. It makes me feel very vulnerable. But what if we framed it that way from the beginning? What if we framed everything as an experiment? And we still tried to keep our commitments. I care a lot about commitment, and my body tends to sabotage me in that a lot, and that makes me upset. But if the ground underneath you is constantly changing, then you're constantly having to redesign what you're doing. So what if that practice, instead of being something that caught us off guard over and over again, was something we cultivated and even enjoyed? Easy for me to say, very hard for me to feel right now. I'm so tired of the ground changing constantly under all of us. Why am I ranting about this to you? I wanted to share a couple of tools that I use today to access imagining, to access getting in touch with design thinking in ways that make our lives, our work, and our creative and vocational attempts to make the world more livable, more thriving, more just, makes them easier and more fun, makes them more possible. So let's start with what design thinking is in very simple terms, according to me, Rachel, who does a particular form of it. There's lots of versions. Most design thinking has what I think of as 4-ish main steps in a cycle that goes on and on. The first one is just noticing. You could call this accepting feedback. You could call this observation. You're just noticing what's already true. I've noticed this works for me and this doesn't. I've noticed that water always flows down that part of the hill. Noticing, feedback, intake, observation, and this can also include listening to other people and listening to yourself. Just listening. Actively listening, actively noticing. Could also include sitting in a place and breathing and noticing what you can see, what you can hear, what you can smell, without any analysis, which is very hard, and it's okay, your brain will go to analysis, but you're just noting. Then we're moving to section 2, which is mapping and assessing. What is under what you've noticed? What does it tell you about what is needed, what is wanted, what is valued? And you can do that in a couple of ways, and that's what I'm going to share with you today as a trick for that, because it can be really hard for those of us who are struggling systemically or personally to actually get in touch with what we need and want, because it can be really painful, because often the reason we're getting in touch with it is we're not getting it. Trying to design from there, very scary, very painful, sometimes inaccessible. Then, once we're using our community, our tips and tricks, our creativity to get in touch with those needs, wants, and values that underlie what we've been noticing, that what we've been noticing tells us we want, need, and value, and we've mapped out what those are. Once we've gone sort of in and to the center and depth of that, then we can expand into ideation, brainstorming, this generative, big, no limits moment, actually, of like, what about this idea? How might we do this? And in that phase, we're also not analyzing. Similar to the observation phase, we're just generating. This idea might meet that need. Looking at our rubric of needs, values, and wants that we've sort of come up with in that previous step, that assess step, that map step, assess needs and values, and saying, okay, I'm gonna focus on, these 4 needs or values. What are some ideas for what I could do, build, make, ask for, change about my routine, change about my work, a class I could take, whatever, that are active, tangible things, whether they're actions or objects or interactions, that would meet those needs and values. They don't need to be perfect, just generating them. That's the brainstorm, the ideation time. And then from that, you're also going to sort those ideas and pick 1 or 2 to try. So that's the ideate and plan phase. It's expansive, and then grab a couple to try. Then we go to prototyping or experimenting. And that's the phase where we're going to take that idea and run cheap, fast, low stakes, pretty safe, pretty low energy, pretty low time commitment, low risk, relatively, experiments to get experiential data, right? We can research the heck out of our ideas. We can research the heck out of our needs. Those can be parts of both of those processes. They can be part of designing the experiment to test the idea. But in the testing, we are always open to failure because that is data. If you can't fail, it's not an experiment. It's a performance. We want information, right? We started with information gathering by observation. Then we got information about what our needs and values were under that observation. Then we generated information about what our ideas and possibilities were. Now we're gathering information about how a couple of those ideas and possibilities work in practice. And we can then take that feedback, whether it's failure or success or some third thing that doesn't fit in either of those categories, and tweak our design or pick a different idea and run an experiment on that. Once we've picked something that we want to be sort of our operating protocol going forward, that doesn't mean it's permanent. It means that we go back into, this is the operating protocol and we're running it. We're doing this plan, this idea that turned into a prototype, that turned into a design, a plan to meet our needs. But we're also observing. We're accepting feedback. We're noticing. We might make little tweaks, or we might need to go through the whole process again in a year, in 3 years, in 2 days. One of the most creative and most exhausting things about disability for me has been how often I find myself needing to do that. Redesign my daily schedule based on a change in my physical symptoms or capacities. Redesign my work, redesign my business, redesign my plan for the future, redesign my plan for the next 3 hours because I suddenly started feeling way sicker. The amount of redesign is getting a little exhausting. And I think I'm losing some of the joy of it. I'm losing my faith in failure as a generative practice because I'm tired. But I'm sharing all of this with you, partially because it's part of the work that I do, and I haven't talked about it in a long time in a place that people can watch for free. And I think it's really helpful to a lot of people right now. So if you're intrigued by this, but you don't totally understand it, that's okay. Drop me a comment, reach out to me on my website, which is under construction, but it is up. And if you want more dedicated support around this stuff, I will help you find that, whether it's from me or someone else. I have classes that are going up, theoretically. I have client slots that will be opening up for mentorship in this stuff, theoretically. I don't know if either of those things are actually going to be possible given how sick I currently am and how little time I have to do things that aren't the maintenance activities. So I guess this question I'm asking is like, how do I invite failure as a generative practice back into my life when I'm so burnt out on it and have shame coming up around it? And you might be asking yourself a similar question. And I think what I want to do is like re-engage with the parts of this process that I use so much in my life, this design thinking process, that bring me joy. And I want to reframe what I'm doing in public as a constant series of experiments. The original experiment for this channel was, can I build a thing that allows me to do the things that I can access that I want to do anyway on camera, to share them with others who might not be able to access them or who might need a buddy, and do that in a way where they don't have to pay money and I might eventually make some money from it to sustain my work. We are about 9 months into the experiment, and my original indicator for the experiment was, can we reach 1,000 subscribers by the end of 1 year? Well, folks, we're at 174 and counting. So probably not, but maybe, I don't know. And at the same time, I am feeling way physically worse than I was when I designed this experiment. So I'm really rethinking it. I wasn't planning to reassess until January, and now I'm not sure. Unfortunately, the YouTube algorithm does not like when you stop posting videos to go redesign your life or rest because you're really sick. So figuring out what to do in the meantime while I'm working through all of this is also a challenge. So I just thought I'd share about it with you all and start at the very beginning. Here's what I've noticed. I wish that this was working. It was working for a while. Right now it's not working. What can I notice about how it's not working and what that indicates about what I need? Well, that's kind of a depressing question. I'm still going to ask it, but let me share something a little more fun with you. If you're struggling to figure out what you want and need to start off a design process of your own in your life, here are 3 writing or drawing activities, or you could voice note them, that you can use, that I use with clients and with myself to start to get at those underlying needs and values in a way that's more fun, lower stakes. They are the bad day, the good day, and the future day. So the bad day works like this. Think of a day where you didn't have a great day. Things really weren't working for you. You could combine a couple days in your head if there's like key things going on in your life that you know aren't working for you, and write out like a half page to a 1 page, 5 minute to 10 minute, or a 1 page drawing description of that day. Get as much descriptive sensory detail as you can. This matters because sometimes our sensory and emotional details are what end up telling us what we need and want more than the sort of obvious conscious content of what we're talking about. If you've ever worked a job that looked great on paper but made you miserable and you couldn't figure out how to explain why to your friends and family, this is a good example of that. For example, I had a day the other day where from the outside what I did was walk my dog, water my garden, feed my chickens, make some lunch, knit, rest and watch TV, go to bed. For so many people, that is an ideal day. For me, I was nauseous, dizzy, hot, extremely exhausted, couldn't think, didn't have the option to do anything else. And my house was filling up with fruit flies because I couldn't do the dishes because I was dizzy. Internally, it was a bad day. So when I get into the details of my description, like the fruit flies and how I felt internally and how bright the light felt, those are going to start to indicate things that I need and value that just the content might not indicate. So describing it in great detail, wallow. If you're in the mood where you're like, I don't want to think about a good version of my life, I really need to express the bad version. What the heck is going on? Why am I so miserable? Go for it. That's what this is for. You don't have to be able to think positively to access your true desires, values, and needs. And you don't even have to be able to confront your true desires, values, and needs. Just describe your bad day and then leave it alone or give it to a friend. Either way, come back to it a few days later on a day when you're having an okay day, if you can find one. It's okay if you can't. And pull up somewhere on the internet one of these lists of universal human needs. Oh my God, I don't feel well. I'm so hot. My heart rate's good. That's good. Because I'm drinking too much coffee. Oh, did you think drinking too much coffee made your heart rate go up? Yeah, that's a normal reaction to drinking too much coffee. If I drink too much coffee, my heart rate goes down. Sometimes it goes down so far that it's in the 50s or 40s. Then I get a migraine. If that happens to you too, it has to do with vasoconstriction. And so, amongst other things, so you can look into it. But this is too long. I'm not going to be able, I was just trying to do a quick video that I could just edit really easily, and I can't do it. This is why I don't know if this is a successful model. Okay, without clenching my jaw until my teeth fall out. When you come back to the detailed description, read it out loud or have a friend read it out loud, look at your list of universal human needs and start guessing for each sentence, like, I wonder if I might be needing this. So like, if you describe your boss yelling at you at work, I wonder if I might be needing respect. Or maybe you don't care how your boss thinks about you, but that amount of noise is a lot and it doesn't feel good. I need sensory, the ability to moderate sensory input. That's a very different need than I need respect, but they're both real needs and they might both come up in the same situation. So look through your description and be like, maybe even with sticky notes, this need goes here, or this value. I really value play, and nowhere in my day did anyone want to play with me. I was so bored and serious all day, I'm noticing in my description. So that's the bad day version. You can do the same thing with a good day. So If you have access to the memory and feelings and ideas of a good day, write a detailed description of a good day. Get the color of the sky, the smell on the wind, the way your skin and hair and eyes felt, what you saw, what you heard, where you were, what time it was, who was there with you, what color the walls were. Get the detail of it without worrying about why. Set it aside, come back to it with that list, and say, oh, this was really lovely because it met my need for beauty. That's a real need. This was really lovely because it met my need for slowness in my day. This was really lovely because it met my need for sugar, like something sweet that brings me joy, sustenance, nourishment. And you'll start to notice the difference between a strategy, like a Danish, and a need, nourishment, right? The need, nourishment, is physically a need that everybody has. But not everybody needs a Danish. Not everybody can eat a Danish. That's a strategy for meeting a need. I'll talk more about this in a lot of my work, but I think it's a really valuable paradigm to start to think about in life. The third activity you can do is similar to these, but it involves time travel. If you can, find a comfortable enough, because some of us are never comfortable, spot, and imagine a day that you would like to live in the future. Maybe in this day you have gotten the pet that you've always wanted and you're out frolicking together. Maybe in this dream of the future, you are in a job that makes you really happy and has a good work-life balance and you get to come home and have board game night with your friends. Maybe in this dream you are marrying your high school sweetheart. Maybe in this dream you are on a solo trip across the country. If immediately, like me, you start going like, but it wouldn't be safe to go on a solo trip across the country financially or physically, and I don't actually know that I want to get married because the institution of marriage, that's okay. Keep describing the day anyway, and get into how fun the description is. Like you're writing about a character in a story. But here's the trick. Write it in the present tense. Meaning, not I will or I did, get in my car and start driving west. I am getting into and then get the details in there. I'm climbing into my blue, sparklingly clean sedan car with my favorite dog in the world. This song is playing on the radio. Name the song. We are headed out at this time of day. The sun is high in the sky. Get into how your body feels. You can bypass some of the mental barriers to the possibilities of a future by trying to access the sensory experience of being there already. That's what fiction does for us when it lets us escape, whether it's TV or books. Give yourself that gift. Write a fiction about the future, but write it in the present tense. Imagine it, draw it, speak it. If you can't picture things visually, that's okay. Use concepts, but still get into details. Think about the smell, right? You don't have to be able to see it to think about like the smell of warm pie. Once you've done that, put it away for a few days. It sounds like the most fun or positive one, and so it's easy to want to be like, okay, let me analyze it right away. Just let it sit. Because another cool thing that happens with this one is that accessing the feeling in your body does its own work without you having to think about it. I know that sounds wooey. It's actually really true. Guided visualization has been known to work for people, including like athletes. It does a lot. This is a similar thing. Putting your body and mind into the sensory experience of the thing, instead of the wanting of the thing far away, the sensory imagining of the thing as if it already is true, gives you access to backwards design from the state of I'm already there in creative and physiological and mental ways that I frankly don't have enough data on why it works to tell you why it works. But if you've ever felt like you traveled to another world during reading a book and missed the characters when you were done, right? It's like you had a physiological and a sensory and an imaginative experience of being there that was real to some degree. So time travel, put it away for a few days, let your creative body work on it, be in it, enjoy, and then come back to it and notice what needs and values were met when you imagined it, both from the content of the text and from the feelings in your body, and note those down. So that's a long video about a way to do one of the first steps of, really two of the first steps of design thinking, which is to notice something about your life, a bad day or a good day, or notice something about what you want in the future by describing it as if it's already happening, and then distilling or harvesting or finding, at the top, what floats to the top, those needs, values, wants, desires, that description, those details, those sensory experiences, those social experiences, those colors, what they actually tell you about what you're really longing for. Because once you know that, you can have it on a piece of paper and you can check your life decisions and experiments and ideas against it and say I did figure out a way to meet that need. Or this person came into my life who totally helps me meet that need and I didn't even plan it. Or we're still not getting this one. I'm still not experiencing a sensation of play. What one thing could I do that's easy, small, fast, cheap, low stakes to try an experiment with bringing a little bit more of that in? We'll talk about brainstorming and ideation processes and how to get into those, especially if you struggle with them, another time. We'll talk about prototyping and experiments another time. But I wanted to invite you into this process with me and let you know that if you want more of this, I am available. I have old content about this that I'm going to try to get up on the channel if people are interested. So please let me know in the comments below if you want to see more about thinking about design and also the stories that we tell ourselves and how those connect to the lives and work and social changes that we design. Thanks for journeying with me. This is the beginning of session 1 of a series that I do as a mentorship, one-on-one mentorship curriculum around this stuff and applying it to your work or your life. I like to focus on folks working in the social impact sector, as well as folks who want to bring more creative and artistic practice or projects into their lives or their routines. Also, folks who are trying to design around interesting or weird parameters like I am. So yeah, if you want to see more of that stuff on this channel, if that would be helpful or fun for you, let me know in the comments and I'll try to post more of it. I guess the other thing here is for me to say, this is an experiment and I'm going to try to cultivate a willingness to fail with my community as an intentional practice of modeling design thinking and sharing design thinking as a toolbox that is so powerful and joyful. I don't know what's going to happen with this channel right now because I've had some changes to my baseline needs and parameters, and I don't know how permanent those changes are. And I am embarking on a design process. How this channel impacts you matters to me in that design process, because one of the needs and values I've identified is the thing I'm offering getting to people who need it? That matters a lot to me. It is a value that I have. I want to offer a thing that causes some little bit of change. Being able to know that that has happened matters to me. There are so many service professionals, so many people doing work who never get to know that, and yet they change lives every day. The number of nurses who have drastically improved my life, and I did my best post-anesthesia to thank them. I don't know what I actually said out loud. It might have been something like, the purple tree is very tall today. But what I meant was, thank you so much for being kind and listening to me and helping me through this. Feedback matters a lot to me because I'm a design thinking person. I like the loop of feedback. It really works well for my creative thoughts, for my social change and sustainable design way of being. I selfishly want to know if this is helping you or not. Sorry. I won't be insulted if it's not. That's the other thing about failure and data gathering. Is it's really not personal. I'm not a failure. I just want to know if this is accomplishing what I need it to accomplish in order to keep doing it. I'm trying to get data. Feedback is so helpful. And the more in my life I've related to feedback that way, the way less personally I've taken it, the way more creatively empowered I've felt to take care of myself and my communities, to change my behavior without needing to think that my soul needs to be fundamentally redesigned, because you are good and good enough just the way you are. And everything else is creation, is an active collaboration with the world. That's what design thinking helps us feel empowered inside of. I really appreciate you all. Apparently this is what I had in me this week. I might post longer videos while I don't feel well, which feels categorically absurd, but it is easier for me. So here you go. Share with anyone you think needs this right now. And if you're like, what do I do after I do those 3 activities? Help me. Leave me a comment or shoot me a message over on the contact page at racheleconomy.com and we can talk. I got you. Thank you for having me. This is a vulnerable process. I don't know what's next. And I'm really, really glad that I get to share it with even one person. So thank you. I'll see you next time here on Disabled Farm School, where creative collaboration with the world is for everybody, and we're just trying to figure out how together.